Sneakers and Cleats, the podcast. The Sneakers and Cleats podcast. It is Monday, April 29th. This is our last podcast of April. It is episode 96. Chuck McGinnick, Matt Roy on tap. Chuck, how was the weekend?
It was great. Loved it.
Loved it?
Was out of town, had to move one child from one school to another. But we found her a place to stay in the great city of Houston, and we're looking forward for what the future may hold at U of H for the next 2 years.
H-Town represent.
Yes.
Well, it's the day after the NFL draft. We're going to give you full post-mortem on the Cowboys draft, how they graded. We'll give you a few surprises, a few takeaways in general from the draft. I think the biggest surprise has been talked about to death of Michael Penix going number 8, but we'll talk about it a little bit as well. There's also a big family reunion happening in Dallas this season. Zeke Elliott has signed a new contract with the Dallas Cowboys, so we'll talk about our expectations of Zeke in that running back room. And also interesting people saying interesting things. Brian Windhorst with a hot take on the Pat McAfee show today, talking about people wanting to come and play with Victor Wembanyama. The Spurs also announcing that they're going to have 2 games in Paris next year, so we'll talk about that as well. Lots to pack in here, so let's get right to it. The number game, 96. What does 96 remind you of? For me, it doesn't really remind me of many players, even though I did put a couple of down. It reminds me more of the last time the Cowboys hoisted the Lombardi Trophy.
And I think of our very own Vincent Taylor from Madison High School, went to Oklahoma State, had a nice NFL career, and then it was ended by injury. But Vincent wore 96 at Oklahoma State. He wore it also in 4 different stops in the NFL.
Very
so
nice.
I don't know why Vincent, other than, good player and great dude, but 96, that's why that sticks out to me.
People think of different things. That's why the game's fun. You think of different things and you think of different numbers. I mean, I think Mike Greenberg put out a book of like who owns the number, maybe who the debate of who's the best number 96. Obviously wouldn't be that, but when you think of the best 96, you might think of like a Clyde Simmons, Cortez Kennedy, Marcus Spears, longtime Cowboy, now ESPN employee. That's a good one as well. When I think 96, I think the last Super Bowl that the Cowboys won over the Steelers. Larry Brown was the Super Bowl MVP that year. Got any good memories from the 96 Super Bowl, Chuck?
Yes, that was, I think, more competitive than I thought it was going to be going in, with Neil O'Donnell as the quarterback of the Steelers.
Yeah, I didn't know that it was a 13.5-point spread for the Cowboys that year.
It was a fine Super Bowl, and Larry Brown aptly earning the MVP too.
Do you know there's only been one corner to win the Super Bowl MVP, or DB to win the Super Bowl MVP, since Larry Brown in 1996? Do you know who it is?
I do not.
You do not?
No.
2002, Dexter Jackson, 2 first-half interceptions for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers against Rich Gannon and the Raiders.
That was almost as if they had the playbook for that game, the way that one turned out. I mean, that was a butt-thumping of biblical proportions.
Well, I think it helped.
Yeah, I just want to let you know that Don Shula wore number 96 for the 1 year. He
wow.
played for the Browns.
Did he really?
Who knew?
Huh.
We have a Don Shula reference from
always
Bob Gamber.
Got to sneak in a Cleveland Browns reference here.
Although I don't know anybody that will make the correlation that Don Shula / Cleveland Browns.
Yeah, exactly.
Other than Bob.
Played 1 year.
Yeah.
Might as well just correlate him to the Colts too at that point. I mean, coached there for a couple of years. So anyway, that's our number game for the day. Also, I had on here as well, the 96 NBA draft class was ridiculously good. So I always kind of think of that. Kobe Bryant, Allen Iverson, Stephon Marbury, Steve Nash, Derek Fisher, Ray Allen, all in the 96 class. So I always think of the 96 class as well. Even though Don's not here, I got to get some basketball in for our guy. So let's get to the Dallas Cowboys draft class. So Thursday, I thought was a really good day. They traded back from 24 to 29. They picked up an extra 3rd-round pick. They were still able to get their guy, Tyler Guyton. But since then, there's been a lot of, mixed reviews on the Cowboys draft class. Mel Kiper on ESPN gave it a B-. NFL Network's Peter Briscoe gave it a B-. But then you have people like Chad Reuter who gave it an A-. So what did you think of the draft class overall? It was 8 players, 6 players basically in the box, either O-lineman, D-lineman, or linebackers. What did you think?
I thought they handled some needs, obviously, and they're going to have depth at the offensive line position like they probably haven't had in a while. So in that regard, very, very good. I mean, I think considering what their draft capital was, where they were drafting, not a bad draft. But again, it's hard to make these assessments literally
Yeah.
right 48 hours after the fact, because we really don't know what these players are going to look like. And, I think the hope for the Cowboys is that they got somebody in there that, we might be calling player X Dak and player B CD right now, but you hope that some of these guys at some point will be those guys that will be the names and the faces of the franchise at some point.
No matter what Jerry says, this was very much not a sexy draft, even though he wants to say Tyler Guyton was a sexy pick in at number 29, but it was definitely a necessary draft. It was necessary to start getting that depth back on your offensive line, on your defensive line, start filling those holes, because it's very much still, as much flash as there is in the NFL, very much still a trenches game. You still are trying to move one man from one point to another point and get somebody through that line. So you still need that kind of depth up there, especially with the losses that they've suffered with Tyler Biadasz and Tyron Smith. But as you look through, I thought that the first round pick is what it is. Second round pick of Marshawn Kneeland was a really good one. That's going to be someone that can try and take some pressure off of Micah and Dexter Lawrence as Dexter Lawrence goes into his contract year. You also have Cooper Beebe, who is everyone's talking about is going to be the day one starter at center, which if you can get your day one starter at center with an extra pick, the extra pick that you picked up from trading back in the first round, that's a hell of a draft move.
Right. I agree.
And so, and then they also got, Maris Leaf. I'm going to have to learn how to pronounce his name. Leafau. Thank you.
Maybe. I don't know.
I mean, we're going to go with Leafau. Wake Forest.
Nothing says draft experts like guys that don't know how to pronounce the names.
Okay,
right?
Come on. Who was studying Maris Leafau? All right, besides Mel.
That dude.
He can play.
It sure looks like it. And they were talking about the length of his arms, man. I mean, this guy is, he's going to be able to fill out the zone, if you will.
Yeah, and then when you look at the rest of it, they got a DB out of Wake Forest, the Southeast Missouri wide receiver Ryan Flournoy, Louisiana offensive tackle Nathan Thomas, and then Auburn DT Justin Rogers in the 7th round. So as you look at it, you can clearly see that there's a vision by the Cowboys. They're trying to replenish the cupboard up front. And is that the way that they should be going, even though they still have some pieces missing?
Yeah, and I think, broader picture too, you can tell there was a plan in place before they even went to the draft board, right? Because it looked like they were aligning with Zeke prior to this draft. They went in knowing that they weren't going to necessarily have to focus on taking on a back that they weren't going to be comfortable drafting. And then also too, let's not forget that free agency is not over. They've done very well in the last half decade of signing serviceable major league players that, maybe are on the back end of their career, but still have some gas left in the tank. And I always use Jaron Kearse as a prime example, but there are players like that they can still go out and find. And, again, I don't think this offseason is, the story hasn't been written just yet.
That's the question, right? Like, okay, you filled up, you got your draft class, you went heavy O-line, heavy D-line, heavy linebackers, heavy guys that you'll have depth at certain positions, bringing in competition for your guys. What do you do now? They've only brought in 3 external free agents, Eric Kendricks, Royce Freeman, and Zeke Elliott. None of them really moving the needle in terms of playing time or bringing an oomph or a competitiveness to your program. So what do you do now? What do the next few months look like as you try and complete this roster? And that's going to be one of those questions that we're going to need answered.
Well, I think Eric Kendricks is going to be a guy that will be a dude on that defense. I mean, his ability to play and be able to recognize things at a very rapid rate and play with some nasty. He likes to, somebody said the other day about, he likes to dirt people. I mean, that's the kind of guy you need on your defense. And I think, with his relationship with Zimmer, that's going to add obviously to his ability to adapt quickly and get with the program pretty quickly. They all will have to be obviously with Zimmer coming in, but I don't know. It's always fun to play this game during the offseason, right? That's why we're here. You just don't know what winning the offseason is going to look like until you start playing on Sundays.
As far as Kendricks goes, can you rely on a 32-year-old linebacker to start every game? I mean, it seems like they're bringing in Maris, the linebacker from Notre Dame, to kind of study up and maybe be that potential starter, down the road.
Yeah, I mean, and who knows? I mean, maybe this guy turns out to be even better,
Mhm.
you know, at some point. And, you know, long term, obviously the Cowboys have invested more in Marist than they have in Eric by drafting him, because he's going to be under contract for at least the next 3 years. So with that said, I mean, that's the hope when you're drafting these guys. You hope they're going to be the next great thing.
Yeah, and I think when we talked about this on Thursday with RJ Ochoa of Blogging with the Boys and of San Antonio Sports Stars Morning Huddle, he said that when he came in on Monday, if it was a good draft, it would look like them trading back on Thursday, them picking up that extra pick. The fact that they made that extra pick, it makes me want to give them an A-, closer to that B+ A- range on their draft, because they were able to basically pick up their starting center possibly in the 3rd round with an extra pick that they acquired by moving back 5 spots and still getting one of the guys that they were targeting in the 1st round. I thought that was a genius move.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, in the fact that, you know, you said it, if you can grab 2 starters with this draft class, I would think going in, you know, coming off of a team that's won 13 games, that you would have to say, given where they were drafting, that's a pretty darn good haul at the top.
By all accounts, they got 2 starters with 1 draft pick. I mean, how do you get better than that? I mean, it's not a sexy pick. That's the thing that a lot of fans, I think, crave, is like, we wanted Jonathan Brooks, the running back. We wanted another receiver to go with Dak. But it's like, if you don't have anyone blocking for Dak and he's flat on his ass, then you're not going to have any balls going to CD or the new receiver or the running back. Like, you're screwed. So if you're drafting 2 starters on your offensive line with 1 draft pick, essentially, it's the right move for me.
At least we're not the Atlanta Falcons today, right? I mean, what are they supposed to do, right? I mean, they had a really good football team, but didn't have a quarterback. So they went out and paid a quarterback.
They went out
and then they
2.
drafted a quarterback. But I mean, that's a win-win for them. I mean, I don't get the uproar about, oh, now we have to worry about Kirk Cousins' feelings being hurt. Look, Kirk Cousins is going to be the starter. And then, God forbid something happens, he gets hurt. You've got another guy that you hope someday will be your franchise quarterback under a rookie contract that, for now, he can kind of learn the ropes from Kirk Cousins.
This take went supremely the other way that I thought it was going. I thought you were going to say that the Falcons are really stupid for doing what they did, and you went completely the other way.
No, I don't get it. I mean, if you're a Falcons fan or somebody that follows that team with as much good young talent as that team has, I don't have a problem with the move. I was shocked at the uproar. Like,
really?
Poor Kirk Cousins. We're supposed to worry about them drafting a number 1 quarterback.
All right,
I disagree.
Let's get into this real quick. So I'm going to give you a check for $180 million, and then I'm going to draft your replacement right behind that.
But
how does that make any sense? It's just it's a bad look.
Well, I mean, I think that was the same problem the Packers had a few years ago with Jordan Love.
No,
it's like,
it's
we've
not.
got Aaron Rodgers. Why are you drafting a quarterback in the 1st round? It's because you hope at some point Jordan Love becomes Aaron Rodgers.
It wasn't the 8th pick in the draft.
He was still a 1st rounder.
27th.
Well, I mean, again, we'll split hairs over that, but I just, from an organizational standpoint, I can see what they're doing here, and all you have to do is look at Green Bay and say that was the right call.
Even at that point, why not JJ McCarthy? I understand they loved Michael Penix, and that's the move that they liked. By the time Kirk Cousins' contract is up 4 years from now, let's say he plays 2 years. The first 2 years are fully guaranteed. He plays the first 2 years. The quarterback's not going to be. He's going to be 27 years old.
But you said the operative word here. The first 2 years are guaranteed. How long did Jordan Love sit on the bench? I mean,
3,
this is
right.
And then,
4.
And then listen, if something were to happen to Kirk Cousins and you have to throw Penix into the mix too early, too soon, you know, you don't know what you're going to get, obviously. But what if he turns out to be the home run that the Falcons think he is?
Where did Jordan Love go in the draft?
Jordan Love went 1st round, number 27.
Number 27. Because my thing is that you're trying to put a team together, right? And you have like a number 1 pick. Was what, 8th pick? Man, that does not seem like the best value for building a team.
No.
If you want a quarterback, that's fine. Go and, pick one up, I would think, in a later round or lower down or something. But to take that position, like, there's so much available in the draft that can help.
They have so many other needs. They needed an edge rusher. They needed a corner. They need all these positions.
And you had
literally every single player outside of 7 of them at your disposal. You could have drafted any offensive lineman you want besides Joe Alton and J.C. Latham. You could have drafted any defensive player you want because the defense didn't start going until number 15. You could have supremely helped yourself, or you trade back with the Raiders or someone who wants Michael Penix and lets them come up and get it and require even more capital. But instead, you have a hurt quarterback who's coming off an Achilles injury, who we don't know what he's going to be. He's mid-30s. And then you have the most injured quarterback in the draft coming into your locker room. You might be on your third quarterback by week 6.
It's possible.
That's the thing. Like, if you're going to make this move, at least make it with some thought in mind.
Well, I think they did have some thought in mind. I just don't know that you or Bob necessarily agree with the move. I don't have a problem with it.
I don't know if the owner agreed with the move too. You guys see that
No,
video?
yes. It didn't look like he did.
Of Terry Fontenot.
Fair enough.
He's like, so this is what we're trying to do here. Anyway, was there any other picks that you were surprised with, or you saw that you were like, this is actually pretty good? Let's talk about first rounds.
Okay. Well, I mean, I guess no, not off the top. I mean, I wasn't studying the draft that much going in, other than, what was going on around here locally, because we had well over a dozen guys from the area, either at UTSA or UIW or Texas State, or players that were, former San Antonio schoolboy stars that were playing in colleges otherwhere. So I was really, or elsewhere, that's where I was looking at the most. But, I was, I guess, a little shocked that Robinson went before the Cowboys had an opportunity to take him, but I think he's going to be a heck of a player.
Yeah,
I don't know that the Cowboys were going to take him, but that seemed to be the consensus, that if he was there, they would take him in the second round.
I didn't think there was a lot of surprises in the first round, to be completely honest. Outside of the Michael Penix thing, I really didn't think there was many surprises. I think a lot of people were surprised that Denver loved Bo Nix, but I wasn't at all. That's exactly who Sean Payton would have drafted. Like, that's who he wanted at the number 1 pick, let alone the number 12 pick. So getting him at 12 wasn't a huge surprise to me as a Broncos fan. But outside of that, I really didn't. I thought that maybe the Raiders drafting Brock Bowers was a little weird. They have a lot of needs, but Brock Bowers was a top 5 player in this draft. So if you're really drafting by best player available, then I guess that's a good pick.
Cowboys fan Yuli.
Is this Yuli Romero?
Yes. As he says, it doesn't feel like we are all in. He's
hi, you. First of all, hi, Yuli. We love you and miss you here at the station. Yuli is one of our previous photogs, moved on to greener pastures up in Dallas now. But I think like we talked about on Thursday, all in is all in on the guys currently on this roster. It's not all in on free agency. It's not all in on what people think. It's all in on Mozzie Smith and DeMarvion Overshone and insert other Cowboy here that
Sam Williams.
Sam Williams, thank you. That has been drafted in the last couple of years that they're going to need to step up now. So
it's their time. This is why we drafted you. At some point, we need you to make or take the next step.
Real quick, getting back to the Cowboys draft, Mel Kiper basically said that he didn't give the Cowboys a very good rating because they did not draft a running back. Insert Zeke Elliott here. I'm going to basically include Zeke Elliott into this draft class because it all kind of goes together. I think that the Cowboys didn't stretch at 87. They could have drafted a running back. They could have drafted maybe Trey Benson out of Florida State with that 73rd pick, but you're going to get your future center first. Because no one's going to block for your running back if there's no center.
Yeah,
there.
When in doubt, go safe, right?
Exactly.
You always say that. If the default is this is a huge offensive line class coming in, and we have a chance to get a guy we think is going to be a starter along an offensive line that I think at this point is getting a little long in the tooth, or had been, and not only that, was eating up a lot of your cap space. This was a good move.
Yeah,
a safe move.
I agree. And then I think when there wasn't a running back there at 87 that they wanted, because I think there was Blake Corum was already gone, Trey Benson was already gone, Jonathan Brooks was already gone, especially after Jerry waxed rhapsodic about him after day 1 of the NFL draft. I don't know if that was a play by Jerry or if it wasn't, but we
may never know.
Not going to split hairs here. I don't want to really know what's going on in Jerry's mind, quite frankly. But I think after 87, when there was no real running backs there that they wanted, or that they had super highly rated, that they were just like, you know what, we're going to sign Zeke. We're going to go in and maybe one of our undrafted free agents will step up and maybe we'll be fine that way. I just think they didn't want to reach.
I think so too. I just think it's fascinating, the whole Zeke signing thing, because obviously that looks like there was a plan in place before this draft. But so you go into the offseason saying that you want to run the ball more effectively the next year. You're basically a middle round rushing the ball team. now you're replacing 2 offensive linemen, and you really are addressing the running back situation. You're saying that Tony Pollard is not as good or worth keeping around more than Zeke Elliott is bringing back. It's just fascinating.
Well,
I mean, again, maybe they see something I don't, but I think it's very, very strange to think that if you're going to run the ball more, or you think you're going to want to run the ball better this year, are you going to do it with how you've currently assembled this offense?
I think you're putting it a little delicately. I think they basically just said Tony Pollard is so insignificant that we can do this with any running back. Zeke Elliott averaged 3.5 yards a carry last year. He's on his 8th
and
year.
he certainly will do it cheaper than what Pollard was pulling down last year.
Absolutely. I mean, Tony Pollard obviously lost himself money last year with his performance. He's still a 1,000-yard rusher, but obviously not what they wanted with the Cowboys. It's a 1-year deal for $3 million. But your running back room is now Zeke Elliott, Malik Davis, Rico Dowdle, Royce Freeman, Deuce Vaughn, Hunter Lepke, Snoop Connor, and Nathaniel Pete. None of those guys right now are going to be a true running back 1, 3 down back, running back 1. But maybe Zeke takes the first 2, and then you bring in Rico or you bring in Malik Davis. It's going to be a running back by committee thing. But if you're, to your point, if you're saying I want to run the ball more, why wouldn't you bring in that RB1? You know,
I agree, and maybe this also goes back into the all-in category. Maybe they see enough that they think Rico at some point is going to have to make that step. And maybe it's this year.
He's going to have to stop with the fumbling issues. But I think as a draft class as a whole, I thought it was a really good draft.
Yeah, not bad.
I thought I would give them a B+, A- category. The running back thing is a little concerning to me as we move forward, but that's going to be plenty of things we talk about here in the near future. I'm just happy Zeke Elliott's back in the building, to be honest.
I mean, I was trying to think, can you ever remember a Cowboy superstar at the end of his career leaving or retiring and then coming back to the Cowboys? This might be the first, right? I can't think of anybody. I mean, you know, freaking 22 went to the
Walker.
Cardinals. You know, all these guys went different places, and then they retired, like Troy.
Herschel Walker came back.
But to come back,
96.
Wow, did that really happen?
Yeah, he came back.
Why don't I remember that?
He came back, but he was behind Emmett.
Was he on one of those teams that won a Super Bowl?
No, he came in the year after the Super Bowl.
Okay.
I think it was the off season after.
I got you. I don't know why I don't remember that.
I was just reading about it this morning. I don't remember.
Okay.
I was 1 year old, so not to make everyone in this room feel really.
Well, I was
old,
at some of those games in that year, and I still don't remember it. So it's okay.
All right, let's get to another topic here. So enough with the draft. We're going to get to a little bit of basketball. I'm going to switch these topics up. I'm going to go 6 first instead of 5. Sorry. So we're gonna talk about the Spurs bringing in some help here. So right before coming in here, I saw this very interesting bite from Brian Windhorst, the ESPN insider, over on the Pat McAfee show, and it was talking about players are going to want to play here, and the Spurs might make a move sooner rather than later.
Before we move on, let me say something about Wembanyama.
Yep.
Some star player, I predict, is going to look at what's going on in San Antonio and say, I want to be there.
Oh, that.
Go put me next to that guy. I don't know who it's going to be, but somebody is going to get – it's probably not going to be a guy who's a number 1 on his team now. My guess is it's going to be a guy who's maybe in the middle of his career who realizes he can't win it all by himself. That situation in San Antonio is too exciting to not have somebody want to go play with that guy. I don't think it's going to be LeBron, but it's going to be
Damian Lillard? Is that who we're talking about?
Dame is under long-term contract
Trae
in
Young?
Milwaukee.
Ooh.
Now, that's an interesting name.
Okay.
Oh, hey, we're doing the basketball.
Okay.
We're doing the basketball today.
How does that not get a Spurs fan excited? First of all, players are going to want to play here. Don's been saying it forever. We talked about it a couple of weeks ago. Players want to come play for Pop, and they want to play with that guy.
Well, let's see. Everybody says all this, but again, I love this time of year too, where we start spitballing, you know, and move the chessboard around. And I mean, that's all Brian Windhorst seemingly was doing right there. I mean, imagine somebody's going to want to play here if, of course, you know, you like the coach, or you like the fact that they've got a bright young player and a talented young player in the middle, but they're going to play here if you write them a check. You know, it's more than anything else. That's what it's going to come down.
It's such a change, though, because you don't see players being like, San Antonio, that's where I want to go. You historically have Charles Barkley saying you got some big old women here and nobody wants to come play in San Antonio.
And I was thinking about that today. Why does Charles Barkley get a pass on being able to just rip whoever he wants and there's no pushback? But he's the fun-loving guy that gets to, especially with a guy who's got an ass as big as that guy has. I mean, how does he get to? I don't know. I mean, everybody loves Charles, but I mean, again, it just seems like he gets free reign to say whatever he wants.
Charles seems like he's had a churro or two in his day. That's for sure. How am I supposed to restart this conversation after that?
Yeah, I don't know. Sorry, I'm spinning wildly out of control on many a topic today.
So anyway, the name that I would want to see, they floated Dame Lillard, Trae Young. The name I would want to see just got eliminated last night, Devin Booker. The Suns have to make some moves. They can't trade Bradley Beal. No one's going to take that contract. It's 4 years, $160 million, and he has a no trade clause. No one's going to take that deal, and after his performance, no one's going to want to take that deal. It seems like to make some moves, the Suns are going to have to trade one of their other two superstars because they're so heavily capped out, and they have no first-round picks from 25 to 30. They have no second-round picks from 24 to 30. They have no moves to make except for trading one of them. If you can get Devin Booker to the San Antonio Spurs, and this, no one take this as Matt Roy is reporting this. Matt Roy wants Devin Booker. That's all Matt wants.
And that's fair. I mean, who wouldn't want to see one of these guys that you'd pay to go watch play here? But again, broader picture, these teams have all assembled with their superstar players on this team and their superstars on this team. Look at what they tried to do in Brooklyn. That was an up-and-coming team. They add Durant, boom, the thing goes to hell. Same thing with the Suns, up-and-coming team. They add Durant, boom, it all goes to hell. I'm not blaming Kevin Durant, he's a hell of a player. I'm just saying, for whatever reason, in this day and age, these superstar teams aren't the ones that are the ones wrecking teams in the postseason and winning championships. So
it does seem to be
hopefully, I hope the Spurs don't fall into this trap yet. I don't think they're in a place where it's worth going all in on somebody that's going to be commanding this kind of dollar figure, until you're ready to take the next step. I mean, let's get the Spurs to where they're around a 500 team before we're making some of these epic moves. Build your house one brick at a time with young players, young talented players, and see where it goes.
But when you look at the draft assets that the Spurs have, they can't possibly use all of those picks. You can't. You have 15 second-round picks in the next 6 years, and you have like 10 firsts in the next 5. You can't possibly have a roster with all of those. You have to use some for trade assets. So if you're going to trade half of those for a Devin Booker type or a Trae Young type, I don't want Trae Young, but I'm just saying Trae Young is a name that's being floated out there, or a Damian Lillard type, or KD, or insert superstar here, that will help you then build out your roster. I get your point, though, that you have to walk before you can run, right?
Yes, in a nutshell. Oh, it's me in a nutshell. Yes.
Our editor, Des, just texted me and said a new miniseries that you should float out to Charles Barkley, Chuck v. Chuck.
He would win that battle hands down.
It depends on what you're doing. Eating churros, he'd probably win.
Well, maybe that would. I don't even know about that.
So you could beat him at the churro eating.
Maybe, possibly. I'm not here to pick a fight. I'm just curious as to why he gets to say disparaging things about the ladies that we have here in our city, and why he gets to just trash Galveston of all places. Like, how random is that? I mean, I'm sure he's worked in other cities that are way worse than Galveston.
Well, I think the reason,
because it's an easy target and there's not a team.
Well, the reason that he keeps doing it is because every time he calls the women here in San Antonio big old women, Shaq is over there losing a lung laughing, and so he just keeps on going to it. But which is funny also because Shaq is from here.
Yeah, I mean, again,
like he's from Cole High School.
It's
so anyway,
get a cheap laugh, or everybody defending him too, and I mean across the board defending Charles Barkley's comments. I don't know, it just seems a little random.
Anyway, there was a little bit of Spurs news today. We'll touch on real quick. They are playing 2 games in Paris next year. We already knew that. We just didn't know what the dates were. We didn't know what the teams were. So it was officially announced today. The Spurs will be playing January 23rd and 25th, 2025 against the Pacers and Tyrese Halliburton in Paris.
Comment allez-vous, mon ami?
whatever that means.
How are you doing?
We might have to, there you go. We might have to learn some French or something here, Chuck. But what do you think of them? There's always uproar whenever they take home games away from fans. I don't know if these are going to be 2 home games. I actually didn't.
I
read
think
that
I
part.
saw that it was going to be they were going to lose 1 home game of the 2, so I would imagine the Pacers would lose the other
Okay.
home game.
So
that's how I
they're
read
all-
it. Don't hold me to the.
yeah, there
calls
always
on that
seems
one.
to be a little bit of uproar when you take away home games from the San Antonio fans. I think this is one of those special cases where there shouldn't be. You have the French phenom. You have the person that is going to be on your roster, hopefully for the next 15 years. There's no better team in the NBA to send to France to play a game in France than the Spurs.
And there's no better way to spread your brand than in Paris. I mean, if it's 1 home game, the business model says this is a golden opportunity for them to spread their brand, given the interest in Victor Wembanyama, to a broader spectrum of people. I mean, it's a win-win for everybody. Again, they play 41 home games a year. If you got to give up 3 because 2 of them you're playing in Austin and 1 in Paris, and it's not like they're asking the Spurs to play half their season in another country. I mean, it just makes sense.
Well, and for the last 25 years or so, since Tony Parker was drafted 22 years ago, the Spurs have been the team of Europe, essentially. I mean, you've had so many Spurs fans out there that way because of the French integration into the Spurs lineup. And you have so many international players that have played for the Spurs. There's no other team that should play there. Maybe the Timberwolves, if you could have gotten them instead of the Pacers, because you have Rudy Gobert, the other French superstar. If maybe that would have been a little bit better instead of the Pacers, but you never take the Spurs out of that game. They are the international team, especially when it comes to that.
Yeah, like I said, I mean, who amongst us is against this? I don't know. It just seems like a great idea for everybody.
All right. Well, anything else you got, Chuck?
Nope. Happy that, a lot of our guys that were involved in the NFL draft in the San Antonio area have been given an opportunity to crack an NFL roster. I mean, I know probably nobody is happy that, they may not have gotten drafted because the only one that did get drafted from the area was Jordan Whittington from Cuero. But man, there are very, very, very few seats at this table. And I mean, the fact that you're even in a camp, whether it's a regular free agent contract or a rookie mini camp invite, I mean, there are just not many people that get to go do this. And I mean, you got to be a damn good football player to even be given those opportunities. And, I'm not going to be a bit surprised if 4 or 5 of our guys end up sticking on rosters because we know they can play ball. Does that mean wrap it up?
No,
we
we wanted to play the chimes again.
Oh, okay.
I just let.
Did you put anything else on that?
No, not yet. I
Oh.
forgot. But
Hey, we got a couple questions
Wanna
from
use all the
Tom
buttons.
in the business office.
Tom,
in the
all
business
right,
office.
Tom. Thanks for watching again.
First of all, he wants to know. He says that they need a point guard and that can distribute the ball. That's his comment, I guess. Do
Okay.
we agree
I think
with
that's
that?
probably going to come in the draft.
And then back to the Cowboys. His question is, what about players that didn't get drafted? Is it still a possibility to pick up a running back free agent?
They did. Those are the other 2 names that I read out on that list. It was Snoop Connor and Nathaniel Pete. Those 2 are undrafted free agent running backs that they picked up. Basically, when you pick up all the undrafted guys, you sign them to whatever you think you can pay them. So a lot of the guys, like you were just talking, Joshua Cephas, Rashad Wisdom, some of the other guys,
Brandon
locally,
Matterson.
yeah, Brandon Matterson, all the local guys. The only local guy that got drafted was Jordan Whittington. So a lot of those guys went undrafted as well. But they did pick up a couple of running backs.
Yep. And don't go to sleep on Millard Bradford
Yep.
either. The young man from O'Connor and TCU. 58 games he played in college
I'm actually
at the D1 level. So,
shocked he did not get drafted, actually.
I mean,
I
that's
thought he was
a
going
lot
to
of
be.
skins on the wall. Played on a really good TCU team that just a couple years ago was playing in the national title game on a pretty good defense. So
Except for in the national title game.
Hey, one last comment from Deborah. She'd like to see Manu be the Spurs head coach. I'm just
Manu.
curious. Has he shown any interest at all in coaching?
He helps. He's around the organization all the time.
yeah, we were spitballing that a couple of years ago because recently when he talks in front of a microphone, he sounds like a coach. So would he be good at it? I don't think there's any question, right? His ability to communicate and be able to communicate in multiple languages, how sturdy he is as a human, he'd make a hell of a coach.
Well, I mean, I think Tim played around with that as well, being the assistant coach. Manu isn't like an assistant coach right now, but he helps out all the time. He's always at the practice facility. He's always teaching the guys, this move, that move, giving them advice on this stuff. I think he's in an advisory role right now with the Spurs.
Yeah, I think Tim would make a good coach too, but I just don't know what his patience level would be for players that would not want to get with the program.
It's always
Probably slim and none.
that old adage from Reggie White. They always ask Reggie White, can you teach this guy this move that you have, or this guy this move? He's like, and he would get frustrated that he couldn't teach it to them because for him it's instinctual. For him, he just does it. Same thing with Tim, I would think, is like it just came naturally in a certain aspect. Some athletes just have that sixth sense, that intensity, that intangibility about them, and it might be that same way.
I don't know. I think Tim would be he was pretty much a leader on the court, so I think some of that would translate naturally. Again, it's how much relatability do you have with players today at his age, and maybe they're not wired like him. Maybe he would have a harder time understanding that too, or maybe he just doesn't want to have to deal with it. But
Tim's around the facility as well. I mean, all these guys that played for the Spurs, they love coming back to the Spurs, and they're always going to be Spurs. So I mean, Tim's always around the facility.
But do you need relatability too? I mean, that's maybe that gets overused. It's like if you're the boss and you want something done a certain way, to hell with whether you can relate or not. They either get with the program or don't. And if they don't, get them the hell out of here.
I think we can all agree that whoever had the best draft was the Denver Broncos. So that's all we got for you today on the Sneakers and Cleats podcast. Remember to download, rate, review, subscribe, use a 5-star rating, tell a friend, tell an enemy. We will be right back here on Thursday on the Sneakers and Cleats podcast. Until then, everyone have a good week.